So let's just give people a few minutes to join, but we're live now.
Okay, great. Well, while we're waiting for people to join, if you're watching this on the replay, welcome. And otherwise, we'll just wait to see if people start coming in.
So we can start in like 2 minutes.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, people are joining now.
Okay, great. Welcome as everyone comes. Happy Friday.
There are quite a few people now.
Okay, great. You let me know when you think you want me to get started, and
Yeah, I think we can start in a minute.
okay,
So once we hit
okay,
the
yeah,
2 minute
you
mark,
just
we can start.
sounds good. 2-minute mark.
Yeah. Saeed says, "Happy Friday, Miss Helen."
Thank you. Same to you. Happy Friday. Thank you all for joining. We're just waiting a few more seconds or so till we get started.
All right, let's start.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining me this Friday. I'm Helen Partlow from Waypoint Immigration. I'm an attorney with the firm. I physically live on Long Island in New York. I always think that that's fun to say. The firm is in Boston, work virtually and all of that. So anyway, we're here to talk about EB-2 NIW, which is the National Interest Waiver. There's always a lot of buzz around this visa because it is a self-sponsored visa. That means you don't need your employer or company or anyone else to do this for you. They can do it for you. So it's not like that's not an option if they're willing to, but a lot of the time people sponsor themselves. This visa follows you around and that gives you a lot more independence and control in that kind of a way. A couple of little tips to start though, it does not give you a status, so you can get this NIW anywhere in the world. If you are in America, out of America, it doesn't give you any status to come to America until you get to the phase of getting your green card. So before then, whatever status you currently are in now, F1, H1B, whatever your status is beyond that, has to remain until you're able to actually get the green card. So there's two phases. There is the first phase of getting the I-140 with your application to prove that you are in the national interest of America, you are doing important work. Then you have to wait for your priority date to become current, which means that you're going to be looking at the visa bulletin that is put out every month and waiting until your date becomes current. Then at that point, you can file for your 485 if you're in America, or go through consular processing if you're out of America to get that green card. Then once you have that, then you are good to go. But until that point, you have to stay in status. So I always want to make sure that's can be confusing for some people. So this doesn't allow you to work. It doesn't give you any authorization or anything like that. Um, so that's just the first thing to start. I know our topic today, though, is do you have a strong NIW? So the entire purpose of the NIW is to show that you're going to impact America. A lot of our clients are already in America on H-1B or their F-1 OPT status or something along those lines. So they're already in America and typically working at a company here. Sometimes entry level, sometimes mid level, and sometimes even senior level. So that part doesn't matter as much where you are in your career. It's just that if you are doing important work that impacts America, and I keep saying America because It's easy to see how your work is helping your company. Obviously, you're their employee, they are paying you for their work, for your work. You are doing your assignments, going through your daily tasks. This NIW wants to know, how are you helping America, not just your employer? So, I tend to describe this when I'm in consultations as, think of it as like the stereotypical greedy Americans. American wants to know, what are you doing for us? That's great that you work for Amazon or Meta or, some pharmaceutical company or anything. That's great. Obviously, you are benefiting them, but what's in it for us? That's pretty much like the bottom line. What's in it for America? How are you helping us? So that's why it can be a little tricky to prove. And that's why a lot of the time, people say like publications are like a good type of profile, a researcher, because your work is getting published in journals, other people's research are building upon yours, and you're kind of like doing building blocks together to kind of advance your own field and kind of do that. And that is really easy for an officer to see how you're impacting America, because that is just common sense, right? How you're kind of laying out that groundwork for the future. It's not so easy to see with some other careers, so, not everyone is a researcher, not everyone is in publications or patents or anything like that. So then it becomes, then it kind of also depends on your industry. So I always tend to think like a healthcare individual, it's easier to see how they're being impactful beyond their employer because they're helping with some sort of diagnostic tool or patient care, improving um, patient treatments or some sort of biomedical device or something like that, where you can see how that's impactful to people's health and things like that. That's really more aligned with like a national interest waiver. There's some, like more of a technical role, data analysts and AI, machine learning people. Um, that is kind of more like driving technology forward, and you have to kind of see, well, what are you doing that is new? And it gets a little bit harder, I feel, for people in that field. But we have a ton of clients in that field, so we're very familiar with machine learning, AI, data analytics, and the like, software engineers and stuff. Because America wants to know, like, how are you helping bring our technology and innovation forward? So then we want to know, what are you doing that is unique? Or if you're just like implementing a tool that already exists and there's nothing really unique or novel about what you're doing, that doesn't really align as well. That doesn't mean that you're completely, you know, out of line for this kind of application. That just means that I maybe need to have a conversation with you to kind of understand more of what you are doing. It's not just as easy to see like in a message. It's more of like a conversation is needed at that point. Um, but yeah, they want to know, like, are you creating new algorithms, new ways of doing things? AI is always a hot topic, I feel. Um, especially in the last couple of months. But, USCIS really wants to know, okay, you're doing AI, but what are you doing in AI? That can be applied to so many different fields. And that kind of goes along with a lot of those jobs that can be applied to multiple fields, data analytics, AI, technology. Um, a lot of those types of things can be done in finance, or it can be done in healthcare, it can be done in retail, or with like Amazon or something like that. So I think also kind of combining it with a specialty, like what exactly are you doing, so that way you have like a well laid out plan to tell the officer, I'm doing AI, but how are you doing AI? In what kind of ways is that going to help the economy or help with the patient outcomes or help develop the next way of doing things and driving business forward and that sort of a thing. So, the bottom line is that this NIW always comes back to, how am I being impactful? Am I helping just my employer, or am I doing things that are bigger than that? I want to know, are you doing things bigger than that? Traditionally, we would also say like sharing your specialized knowledge with other specialists in your field is a good way of sharing that impact. So that can be through publications, like we already discussed, through research and things like that. It also can be done through like going to conferences with professional organizations or through a professional membership. sharing your specialized knowledge with other specialized people. So I say it in that certain way because, I'm not just talking about starting a YouTube channel or like making a blog and sharing your knowledge just with the general public. We're looking to see for you to bring your industry forward that has to be a specific audience, right? Because if you're just talking to anyone on YouTube, they have no idea what you're talking about, right? They're not in your field. They don't have that kind of specialized knowledge that you do. And therefore, it's not really going to drive any innovation because they're not going to act with that additional knowledge. So you're looking for an audience with your specific talents, your specific knowledge, and kind of talking in that kind of a way. So, NIWs I feel like have changed in the last 6 or so months. It's kind of gotten more, I don't know what the right word for it is, but I've definitely seen like a higher level of wanting what they want to see from everybody. So like I would say 6+ months ago, if you said you were an AI, they would say, okay, welcome, your application is approved. Now it's more like, okay, well, you're an AI, which is very obviously innovative and a hot topic, and a lot of people are discussing various things, but now they want to know, what are you doing with AI? What specifically are you doing? How is it being implemented? Is there a specific field that you're targeting? They want to know, what is your actual plan? Like, what's your short-term goals? What's your long-term goals? How do you see these things building upon each other? So really kind of giving them a roadmap almost as to what you're going to do in order to get to that national impact that you're claiming. Um, so all of that really comes down to what your proposed endeavor is. And that's just a fancy way of saying, what's your plan to impact America? They want to know if you have a well laid out plan, if it makes sense with, it goes like in line with kind of what you've done, but it is very future oriented. So you want to make sure that you are looking towards the future, different things that you can do, and kind of go along with that. So I think that that kind of maybe helps people assess themselves a little bit and seeing if this is a good pathway. If you did want to have like an actual assessment, our law firm does do free assessments right now on our website. So, I'm sure we can post the link at some point. But if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you can find that there. We're doing free NIW assessments. So if you think that this does sound like your kind of profile, that you are doing this type of work and that you're interested in, having us evaluate your exact credentials, we'd be happy to do that and get back to you with some results. But I think at that point, I think I've said pretty much everything I'd want to on the topic. So if Jason wants to start with any specific questions, I don't know if anyone has sent any in, but if you have a question, please post it and then he can read it out to everybody.
Sounds good. Yeah, I don't see any questions right now, but feel free to start asking questions.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I could think of some like frequently asked questions if people don't have anything or while we're waiting for them to maybe type it out.
Okay.
Um, so frequently asked questions. I'm a student. Can I still apply for NIW? So, NIW, you don't have to be in a certain level of career. You can be a student and still making this impact. Um, there's different ways to qualify. The easiest way is if you have an advanced degree, like a master's degree, or if you have a bachelor's. Then if you have just a bachelor's, you'd have to show 5 years of progressive experience. Or there's a third way if you have exceptional ability, and there's different criteria. You'd have to meet three of them in order to qualify through that. So it's easiest to show if you do have a master's, but if you don't, there's still other ways that you could qualify for this. It's just everything then has to align with that national impact. So, you can be still early on in your career. It depends on the person and kind of what projects you've been doing, what kinds of things, activities have you been up to, and things like that. So this is not necessarily for only senior level people. That's a question that I definitely get a lot.
So Rodrigo has one.
Okay, great.
Is there any changes expected in processing times with the new administration, or is there any concerns of the NIW classification to be eliminated?
Well, definitely. I mean, I don't foresee it being eliminated, but that doesn't mean like, it's hard to say what exactly is going to happen, of course. Um, but as far as like processing time goes, we do expect to have delays on that. So there's two different ways that you can apply. You could do regular processing where they don't have a specific time to get back to you. And I would say it's probably, I don't know, it can vary wildly, but like 4 to 8 months, 4 to 6 months, kind of right now, something along those lines. And then it is predicted next year for it to kind of go to 10 to 12 months potentially to hear back after you apply. If you do premium processing, the government fee is 28.05. Our firm doesn't charge anything extra if that is something that you wanted to do. And then USCIS has 45 business days to respond back to you. And again, that also can vary wildly. Sometimes we get a reply back in 10 days, sometimes 3 weeks. Um, but they have up to the 45 business days to give you, either an acceptance or like an R fee or something like that.
So John asks, is 5 years of post-baccalaureate option a good one for NIW?
Yeah, so I mean, there's just a little bit extra that you need to prove. So you have to show that you have 5 complete full-time years of work. So this could be over a 10-year time frame. It doesn't have to be like consecutive. You just have to have 5 full-time years of work. So you can't have been working part-time or anything like that. And it also has to be progressive. So you can't have just stayed at the same job level the entire time. You would be then looking to argue that you've been promoted, you've been giving additional responsibilities, things like that, because that shows that progress. So you can do that through like employment verification letters, different proof that you were in those roles for that duration of time.
Mohammed asks, can you run us for the current timelines from filing to applying for a green card?
Sure. So this differentiates from the birth country. So rest of world is everyone that's not from Mexico, Philippines, China, or India. So those are called row countries. So if you're born in a country that is not one of those, right now it's about 2 to 3 years is what we've been saying for people, because by the time you get this put in, get it approved, and then wait your turn in line, so to speak, that's kind of what is expected. We do think that that timeline is going to increase to maybe 3 to 5 years for the row countries. Next year, just with Trump becoming president again, it is kind of just anticipated there's going to be further delays. So, I would probably lean more towards the 3 to 5 years. So this is not anything that happens quickly, right? There is nothing that happens fast in immigration. I'm sure you all know this already. It is a slow-moving vehicle for sure. Um, but if you are from like China, India, Mexico, Philippines, particularly China and India, and especially India, even amongst all of that, the backlog for India is so incredibly long that, we're not sure exactly how long it is in reality, just because there is retrogression where they go backwards in time, they just stay stagnant, they don't move at all. So I know that there's been some analysts that say it's like a 90-year wait once you kind of take all of that into consideration. So if you are from India, NIW does allow you to have some benefits, like if you are an H-1B holder, it allows you to renew your H-1B into the future without worrying about that. If you have a spouse that's an H-4 holder, having your approved I-140 will allow that person, as of right now, to get an EAD. There is some talk about that potentially going away next year, that extra added benefit. So that's like on our radar. But right now, it's still a viable option for people. So yeah, so NIW, the time frame is slightly changing. If you're from India, it's just going to be incredibly long, and it's long as well with China. I'm not sure the exact estimated backlog for that, but that one is a lot more attainable than the one from India.
Saeed asks, how we can submit the document reference since it is company confidential?
So I'm assuming you're talking about different work documents that you've done and things like that. So I know with our clients, we'll ask them to redact it. So, for instance, say that you got an email from somebody saying, "Oh, you did a great job on this project. It increased our customers by 13% or whatever, whatever it would say." Sometimes they're allowed to redact like the first half of that email where it has the person's name, but they're allowed to keep the at whatever the company is .com. So that way we can see the email, if it has like confidential document, like terminology throughout the email, you can redact that. It's kind of like, so I'll back up just a second. So in order to show that you are doing these things, you have to show that you are 51% likely that you are doing the things that we're claiming that you're doing. So, the officer, like, if they don't want to know what the code is. If you're like into writing code, into algorithms, we don't know what any of that stuff means. We need like contextual documents that kind of help us understand what it is, what you're doing. So, if there is things that you can do, then you can you redact it. And that's really I mean, there's some other ideas that we have maybe to like have other things that you would be allowed to share, but I know that that has definitely come up, and a lot of clients are able to redact things or find things that they can provide.
Ma asks, what would be your suggestion in terms of choosing the field when we have multiple streams of experience, such as AI, cybersecurity, and cloud in my case? Also, what would be the ideal number of recommendations needed, and are they need to be academic, or will it be okay if it came from corporate titles like CISO or regional managers?
All right, so the first one definitely have worked with people in the similar fields as like AI and cloud and those other things. And it is a little bit more difficult to prove if your background experience is varied. So I think as long as your proposed endeavor is focused, you would pick your focus area and then use the experience that you have to support that. Like for instance, I had an AI client that was doing things with vehicles, retail, and like crop dusters, which are three very wildly different things. And we got him approved because we had to find like a way to kind of explain his proposed endeavor and how it made sense that you would have this varied experience in this field because it can be applied in so many different ways. So I think it's best if you can kind of narrow it based upon what most of your experience is and kind of telling that story so that it does make sense to the officer as to why you would have that varied experience. Like I wouldn't tiptoe around it. I would just explain it in a logical way that makes sense because the officer is going to pick up on that. It's not like it's something that you can kind of hide in your application. You want to kind of like address that head on and explain it in a way that the officer's like, oh, okay, I can understand how that background has been shaped the way that it has. And then with recommendation letters, so typically our firm, has work people, like your supervisors, managers, write reference letters. We ask for an academic letter, from a professor that you had that maybe you did a project on or a publication with. If your education is like 10 plus years down the line and that is just like, too far in the past, then we would maybe ask for two independent recommendation letters. Typically we ask for one. But we can kind of like play around with that and morph it to whatever the individual's needs are. But independent letters are from people that have not supervised you, they have not directly taught you. They're experts in your field. You're is as exact to your niche as possible. And they just kind of like discuss things about your background and how you kind of fit into the industry. So that is something that our firm writes and helps you with.
Duval asks, do you think specialization in fintech with 15 years of experience can make a case for an NIW qualification?
I'd have to know what you're doing in fintech. Are you innovating anything? Is it just kind of, trudging along and implementing things as they are? Like what exactly is being done that is new? That's really the question. The 15 plus years doesn't always mean that that's the case. unfortunately. It depends on the actual job duties and projects and things like that.
Rodrigo asks, apart from tech industry or STEM or other profiles considered strong?
Um, a lot of our clients have been STEM, but I have worked on some that there was one client that was doing something with like language and incorporating that in like different scenarios. I forget exactly. This was quite a while ago. Sorry, the thought kind of went out of my head. But I mean, it can be non-STEM. So while STEM is like the easiest to kind of go along with the NIW, it can be non-STEM, as long as you are having that impact beyond your employer in an area that the U.S. is interested in furthering. So that's why it's kind of like a two-part kind of question. Are you going beyond your employer? And is it an area the U.S. also wants to advance?
Islam asks, if someone, his publications are recent and the citation number not that big, can he still apply?
Yeah, so there's people that apply with publications of all different stages. They have some published, some that are pending, some that are recent. There is no exact number or threshold. It's all about telling your story. There is no exact evidence that you can provide where the officer is going to be like, oh, this person's approved. I see that they have this in their packet. They're going to want to know, where was this published? Is it just on a website? Like, there's some websites where you can just kind of like almost anyone can upload things. Is it in a scientific journal? What's that journal's reputation? Does it have a high impact factor? Is it widely, does it have like a great reputation, that sort of thing. So it depends also where it was published and not only like the citation level. But if it is something that is new, you could maybe get a reference letter for someone that has cited your work and they can kind of like, talk about how it was useful and how it helps spur their own research ahead and how it can do that for other people. There's other ways to kind of use that information to be beneficial for an NIW.
Rami asks, what is the timeline from preparing to filing a case with your firm? I think we have time for like
Um,
three more
yeah.
questions.
Yeah, so that depends a lot on like how fast and organized you are with getting those documents. This is definitely a partnership, right? So there's three different prongs of the NIW. The second prong, the well-positioned prong, we rely very heavily upon what the client's able to provide as far as work documents, industry contributions, and things like that. So the more organized you are with those documents and are able to kind of relay that information to us and upload them to, like, we create a share drive, the faster it can kind of proceed. But I would say on average, it's like 3 to 5 months. We're currently trying to get that down to the lower end of that spectrum. Um, but yeah, it's definitely a process. We have our own internal review stages, and we help to make sure that you are uploading as many of those documents as you can. We might reply back with some additional ideas, and it's definitely like a journey that we kind of take together.
Shraven asks, does working experience in yoga wellness help build a strong profile? I worked in a yoga wellness company to build products using AI. I have also worked on COVID-19 related products used by millions of people during the pandemic at a healthcare company.
Okay, well, it's not really possible to like do a deep dive with that specific profile because there are some things in there that might be beneficial, like, the COVID type of work or something to do with AI. I would definitely have to have a conversation in order to kind of evaluate that one. But if you're interested, you can put in for a free assessment through our website and we can at least take like a look at your resume and kind of give a better idea, or through a consultation would be available too.
Kapil has a question. I have my PhD in aerospace. Recently, I applied AI to make real-time predictions of very time-consuming simulations in aerospace. However, I only have one conference publication, and I've reviewed one article in a prestigious journal in the field and reviewed two conference papers. I plan to continue this as a postdoc. Does this make a strong case for me, or do I need to wait?
I don't know if it would make a strong case, but it sounds like you definitely have something there to work with that it would definitely need to be explored more in a conversation. PhD people, people with a PhD rather can make for a strong NIW. And, since you are a recent grad, I think it would be expected not to have an overly, well-developed portfolio with those different things. So I think, it would kind of depend on, like, again, where was this conference? What is the kind of novel or unique thing about these publications? What is the journals that they were published at? And kind of what the future holds for you. Like, what is your future plan? What are you going to do now after graduation? So I think that it would need some follow-up conversation. But I think it sounds like it could be a viable NIW case.
Right, I think that's all the time we have. Yeah, feel free to keep adding questions, and then Helen, I guess you can just reply in the comments.
Okay, that sounds good.
Great. All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining today.